The biggest challenge that we have with the human body for both men and women is that our number one need as a human body is survival. So your body will do everything it needs to do to stay alive. So, which is really fascinating when you start to break down different components like fasting. When you go without food, what ends up happening is your body has to make itself stronger temporarily so that it can go find food. Like, one of the greatest studies I ever found on fasting was that 48 hours without food, your whole dopamine system gets rebooted and new dopamine receptor sites start to form for both men and women.
Wow.
So why would the body do that? Because it wants you motivated to go find food.
Well, Dr. Mindy, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And like I told you in the beginning, I just love what you're up to, and the message you're bringing forward is just so needed right now. It's refreshing, it's inspiring. Like, I'm really excited for this conversation because you're doing great work out there.
Thank you for that. That's super. I really appreciate that. And I can say the exact same thing back to you. You are a New York Times bestselling author, and you have helped millions of women all around the world to better understand their bodies. And one of my favorite things about your work is that you're truly redefining what it means to age with purpose and strength. I think the work you're doing is incredible, and I just can't wait to dive into your story, like how you got started and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate you seeing, what I'm up to, because we do need to redefine aging, especially for women. And so, so I can't wait to dive into this topic.
Let's go back to your early life. When did you first realize that you wanted to pursue a career in health and wellness?
Yeah. Well, so I grew up in Malibu, and I always say I had like hippy dippy parents, and we were recycling before recycling was a thing. We were eating natural foods and didn't have sugar in our house. And every morning I'd show up at the breakfast table, and my mom had a pile of supplements ready for us. Like, she was definitely a woman ahead of her time, and we were just always doing natural things in the house. We also didn't rush off to the doctor for everything. There was sort of a reverence for the body heals itself, and that was sort of permeated my household. So fast forward to my high school years, I was a competitive athlete, and whenever I got injured, we would always go to the chiropractor or to the acupuncturist or the herbalist. Like, we were always going to some form of alternative medicine. And when I landed in college, I was playing on a tennis scholarship, and I had so many injuries that eventually led to me getting chronic fatigue syndrome. And when I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, I was 19 years old. If you don't know anything about chronic fatigue, it's one of the most challenging conditions, because what happens is you're just limp. You have no energy all day long, and then at nighttime you get a burst of energy and you can't sleep. So it's like this strange combination of extreme fatigue mixed with a very dysregulated circadian rhythm. So my mom was concerned. Obviously, we ended up in a specialist's office, and I'll never forget the day my mom was so excited because she was like, I found the best specialist in chronic fatigue in LA. We drive all the way down. He was in Redondo Beach, drive all the way down to Redondo Beach, and I sit in his office across from this man with a white coat on and a big leather mahogany desk. And my mom explains what's going on with me, and he looks at me and he says, well, yep, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome. And he pulls out a list of medications, and he says, here are all the medications that we know will actually work for chronic fatigue. But we don't know which one of these medications is going to work for you. And so my mom was like, oh my God, great, fabulous. Okay, what do we do here? And he said, well, we start with the first medication. If that doesn't work, we go to the next medication, then we go to the next medication. And my mom quickly catches on and is like, wait a second. She's got to get back to school. She's got to get on a plane. She's got a tennis scholarship. Like, we don't have time to see if these medications work. And he very smartly looked at my mom and I and said, well, does she look like she can go back to school? This is not a woman that is going to ever be able to go back to school. And my mom turns to me and looks me straight in the eye and says, do not believe him. And we get in a car and she drives me to Santa Monica where her holistic MD was. That MD put me on a strict diet change. And pretty much a keto diet mixed with some variety of supplements. And within 2 weeks, my energy was coming back. My brain fog was going away. Within 3 weeks, I was back on a plane, back at school. Within 4 weeks, I was back on the tennis court. And so in that moment, I learned very quickly that if you want out of any chronic condition in your life, you got to start with lifestyle first. And when you implement the right lifestyle tool, the body knows how to heal itself. And that, when I saw it in my own body, when I had my own experience being gaslit in a doctor's office, that was the day I wanted to help people not have to go through that experience, because it was so hopeless for a 19-year-old to hear your only choice is to go home and go to bed and take a drug and hope that it works. And there are millions and millions of people right now who get that same message every single day without even a small piece of lifestyle advice being given to them.
A lot of people will hear things like that from a doctor and they'll think, oh, he's a doctor, he knows better.
Right.
And so then they'll start testing all the different medications, not even thinking about what potential side effects those medications can have on your body.
That's right.
And so you were able to completely turn this around just by changing your diet.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it was like at 19 to experience it within my own body made me such a believer, because I could see, I mean, literally this whole holistic MD gave me, here are the foods you eat, here are the foods you don't eat. And basically he told me eat meat and vegetables and stay away from refined carbohydrates like breads and pastas and all the processed foods that I was eating from, college was pizza and beer. And he got me off all of that, got me on just meat and vegetables and some low glycemic fruits like berries. And like I could witness it within my own body within 2 weeks. I never needed motivation to stay healthy again, because I had some momentum with my health that I witnessed by just changing my diet.
Mm-hmm. And the more we learn about the gut microbiome, we are learning that food really is medicine.
Yep.
And what is it? Food is mood. And that's quite true too. Some people don't realize this, but certain foods that you put into your body can also make you feel depressed or lethargic, even anxious.
Yep. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we're now, as a culture, starting to see that, which is so strange, because anybody who has children knows you give them a piece of candy and they go crazy. They get all wound up and hyperactive. But why don't we make that same realization when we are adults eating a food that is going to cause a depression or cause anxiety, or is going to maybe, I think one of the biggest problems with food is the depression and the brain fog and the consequences of bad food don't show up right away. Right? Like think about it. Like if you love donuts and you eat a donut, you just feel happy. You're like, I ate a donut. I feel good. But you don't realize that 3 hours later, the brain fog, the lethargy, or even maybe the next day, the depression, you don't ever link that back to the donut. And that's the awareness I think we need to start bringing forward, is that your brain absolutely is going to respond to the fuel you gave it the day before. That makes so much sense. I think everybody could agree on that.
It makes so much sense. And I actually had a naturopathic doctor on the show, and she talked about how when you eat your food, sometimes you get a delayed reaction to what you're putting in your body.
Yep.
And that's proven. So you can eat something today and not feel the effects of what you've eaten for up to, I think she said, over a week.
Yeah.
So it takes a while for you to really stick to a diet and figure out if it's going to work for you or not.
That's right.
Because you kind of have to detox and cleanse yourself of all the poison basically that you're putting into your body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful observation. And we are, one of the statements I used to say to my patients all the time is, do something today that your tomorrow self will thank you for. And I love that quote because we're so focused on the today self.
Yes.
We're like, what do I want to eat? What am I in the mood to eat? Or, am I hungry? We're always thinking about feeding the today self.
Yes.
But in reality, we need to always keep in mind two people, the today version and the tomorrow version. If you decide to go out and drink at a bar one night, the next day, the tomorrow version's not very happy.
That's right.
So we need to keep applying those same principles to food. And it could be a week later. I think that's really profound. That statement makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, and it's true, and when you eat a healthful meal, at least me, I'm not going to can't speak for everybody, but it has never happened to me where I eat a healthful, nutritious meal and I think, man, I wish I had some more fat and grease in that.
Yeah.
Or I wish it was a little unhealthier.
Yeah.
Same with a workout. Man, I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
That's never happened.
So true. Yeah, the regret is very, very minimal when it comes to healthy habits. It's really true. But yet, again, this is why I think about the tomorrow self. Every day I'm thinking about how do I want to think today? What kind of energy do I want to have? What's the experience I want to have with my body today?
Yes.
And then also looking down the pipeline, okay, well, what's tomorrow bring and the next day bring? I'll give you a full transparent example of this in my own life. So I flew down here this morning to LA. I have 3 interviews today. I have 1 tomorrow and 1 the next day. So 2 nights ago, I was like, I need to make sure that I get good sleep. I need to not drink. I need to make sure I get enough protein and I'm eating good food the days leading up to the performance days. So I used, just like an athlete would think about what they're eating before a competition, I think we need to start looking at mental performance in life through the same lens. What you do those days before is going to be who you are the following days.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right. And it's kind of like too, if you do get on a diet where you're just eating whole foods, healthful foods, and then you reintroduce junk food, suddenly your body rejects it.
Yep.
And it goes to show how, and it goes to show you how impactful a poor diet can really have on your body. But the thing is that when you're in this habit, it's hard to notice it.
Yeah. I used to do that with my kids all the time. I would take them off their favorite food for at least 2 days. I would play a game with them. I'd be like, don't eat your favorite sugary drink or your sugary dessert for 2 to 3 days, and then you can eat it again. And then you tell me how you feel. And we would play this game all the time so that they could actually feel when you take it away, how the body feels without it. And now let's bring it back in. But if you look at it from the lens of human behavior, so many people are eating the wrong foods day after day after day. So they don't even have they haven't even experienced their body through the lens, or their brain through the lens of eating good foods. Right. This is why I love fasting. It was like the greatest tool that I ever found to change human behavior around food. Put somebody in a 1-day fast, a 3-day fast, and then have them start to reintegrate the foods they love. They will absolutely change their relationship to that food because they've cleaned the system out. And now they're adding it back in, and the taste buds are like, whoa, this tastes too sweet or this tastes too salty. And the body starts to feel sleepy. You can feel the whole energy system, the brain fog. So that's one of the reasons I got into fasting, was because I could teach my patients internal motivation that way by taking food out of the equation, then putting food back in, and then let them decide as opposed to me telling them what to do.
Right. That's actually, I've never heard it done that way before. It's like, let's take it out for a second, then let's reintroduce this food you think you like.
That's right.
Let's see how you feel.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and Dr. Mindy, did that experience when you were 19 years old, is that what led to your pursuing your doctorate of chiropractic?
Yeah. So it was interesting. When I got well, in my early 20s, I really felt like the medical establishment had let me down. And, it was really profound moment sitting where this doctor that I thought was going to be the guy that gave me all the answers. And instead, he put me down. He made me feel less than. So I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't want to go through the traditional, I didn't want to help people with traditional care. So I have been seeing a chiropractor since I was 5 years old. And our chiropractor we went to for everything. I had chronic ear infections, if we had a cold, if we had sports injuries, like we would always go to the chiropractor, and he was giving us nutrition advice and supplements and doing all kinds of therapies that would help our body heal itself. So it was kind of a natural fit. It was like I was raised by this very natural mom. I had had so many positive experiences with natural health care. And then I had had this really negative experience with a more conventional approach. And so I just was like, I want to teach people how to heal themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a part of a system that's divvying out drugs and surgery and taking the credit for the healing. I want to be a part of a system that's empowering the person to heal themselves, which is why I ended up in chiropractic school.
You just said something that I'm finding very interesting. I was always under the impression that a chiropractor was just somebody that you went to for an adjustment. Yep. I didn't realize you can talk to a chiropractor about nutrition and and a cold.
Yeah. This is such a good discussion, and one that I've not had on very many podcasts. What most people don't realize about chiropractic is that it's an art, which is the adjustment, and everybody does it very different. It's a philosophy, which the philosophy is the body heals itself, and when the body gets off course, it's because something interfered with that healing. So it was either a physical interference, like a repetitive, bad repetitive movement, or it was a chemical interference, like repetitive poor diet, or emotional, like a trauma as a child, or being in a chronic state of stress. And that when these interferences happen in our life, then the body can't heal itself. So the job becomes for us to remove the interferences. And that's a big part of what we were taught in school, was sometimes you remove the physical interference. Other times you remove the chemical interference. Other times you remove the emotional interference. But your job as a chiropractor is to remove what is blocking the body from healing itself. And then the third part of our whole triad of philosophy is there's science behind it, a tremendous amount of science. I was actually having a very interesting discussion with a woman the other day that was very anti-chiropractic. And I said, can you tell me why you're against chiropractic? And she didn't really have a clear answer. It was like she saw a video on YouTube that was slanderous, and she believed the video. And she said, and there's no science to it. And I said, that's really interesting, because that's not what we're taught. We're taught that there's a tremendous amount of science. For example, one of the greatest studies that was ever done on chiropractic showed that when a person got their atlas adjusted and relined back up in a normal position, that their blood pressure went down.
Wow.
And it actually, the adjustment outperformed blood pressure medication. And it was absolutely done in a scientific study. So we get lost, science gets thrown around a lot today as like the hero of healthcare. And science, you can find a lot of great studies in all kinds of alternative healthcare. If you're willing to dive into PubMed, you're willing to dive in and look at beyond the surface, you can see that there's so much information out there showing that even everything from a chiropractic adjustment to fasting to a supplement, There's so much interesting science that isn't brought to the mainstream. So, but yeah, I mean, to your point, chiropractic is so misunderstood. And I have a little section in Age Like a Girl. I did a letter to the reader. My publisher asked me, I had done a letter to the reader in Eat Like a Girl, and they loved it so much. They're like, can you do a letter to the reader in Age Like a Girl? And one of the things I do is talk about my clinical experience as a chiropractor, because my job day in and day out for in 30 years, I had close to 50,000 people come through my doors. My job was to teach them how to remove these interferences so that their body could heal itself. So I took moms to the grocery store and I showed them how to read a label. I talked to my patients about how do you talk to your traditional medical doctor so you don't just get prescriptions. I gave lectures every month in my clinic about this is how your brain works. This is how your thyroid works. These are how hormones work. This is where you need to detox. The whole goal of my clinic was to put the power back into the patient so that they made smart decisions so that they could keep their body healing itself. Doctor means to teach. Doctor doesn't mean you do the healing. It means you teach the patient how to heal themselves.
And I love that you're mentioning this because you were also just talking about your letter to the reader. In your new book, in the letter to the reader, you write, your body's not broken, it's brilliant, it loves you fiercely. And the more you understand its design, the more you'll feel that love. And that is one thing that I think is so empowering and inspiring about what you're doing is you're doing just that. You're not saying, I have the answers, come to my practice, I'm gonna heal you. You're showing people this is what you need to do. But more importantly, in my opinion, Dr. Mindy, not only are you showing people what to do, you're telling them what's going on behind the scenes when you make certain choices. And I think that's really important because while it's comforting to believe that eating fibrous greens is good for your health, understanding why is just more empowering.
So thank you for bringing that up. I feel very seen in that. So thank you. It's very interesting because I was teaching my patients how to heal themselves and how to stay healthy. And I had a group, I call them the mama bears. I had a group of women that were in their early 40s, late 30s that came to me one day and they said, everything you're teaching us has been so powerful. We're wondering if maybe you could put it on video so our friends in the rest of the country could learn what we're learning. And at that time, Facebook Lives had just started. And so I decided that every time I gave a class, every time I was educating patients on certain techniques or parts of their lifestyle, I would video it. And so I started videoing all these classes and these interactions with patients, and I put that video on YouTube. And one day, one of those videos went viral. And what shocked me is the video was on two things. At the end of a day of serving patients, I went to a whiteboard and I was like, this is what happens when you don't eat. This is how your body heals itself. And that video just took off. And I talk about terms like autophagy. And I was like, thought, are people gonna care what autophagy is? But sure enough, they did. And more people started asking me, can you explain more about fasting? Can you explain more about autophagy? And I think we have missed the mark if we just hand a medication, a supplement, or do even a natural treatment, and we don't explain what it's doing for the person's body, then you haven't taught that patient how to fish. You've just given them a fish.
Right.
And so my goal then became, when I watched people respond to this video on YouTube, was how many different ways could I teach people how their bodies work? And if I could teach them how their bodies work, would they take better care of it? And that's what we proved on my YouTube channel, was that's exactly right. Don't tell me to eat the fiber. Tell me why I need to eat the fiber. And now I don't need you. Now I can make smart decisions for myself.
And after starting your practice, at what point did you decide that you wanted to focus specifically on women's health and hormones?
Yeah. So it's such a good question. The mama bears of my practice, I really give them so much credit for why I'm sitting where I'm sitting today, because they would drop their kids off at school and then they would come and in my clinic, we had everything from chiropractic to nutrition consults to detox to hyperbaric oxygen to red light. We had mixed integrative wellness, functional health, and biohacking. We had mixed it all together. So people would come in and do a lot of different things. And then we had community. So these women would stay and hang out with each other in the lobby of my waiting room. And when I got done seeing patients, they would just ask more and more questions. And I started to realize that this thing we're talking about, how necessary it was that we educate, not just treat. There's a big difference between treating somebody and educating somebody. So it was that group that really got me thinking about writing books. It got me thinking about doing videos. And it got me understanding the responsibility I had as a doctor to not just be the smartest one in the room. That's not the goal. The goal is to teach people how to heal. And so it was really that group of women that fueled me to start to lean in deeper into women's health. And ironically, at the time, it's so weird to look back on this because that was 10 years ago that I started all my YouTube stuff and the videos. At the time, we weren't talking about women's health the way we're talking about it now. Menopause was never even discussed 10 years ago. Now everybody wants in on the menopause conversation. But what happened when I started doing these videos on how a woman's body worked is I asked my YouTube following, put in the comments what you need to know more about. Put in the comments what you are resonating with. And we got hundreds of thousands of women around the world asking questions, commenting on my videos. And I just saw that there was this big open hole that women were not being educated. In fact, most women were going into their doctor's offices and being gaslit and being told that they're depressed, here's an antidepressant. You're not sleeping, here's Ambien. You're not, you don't have enough energy, try another cup of coffee. Maybe you need to lose weight. But there was no respect for teaching women how this incredible body we get to live in works. Mm-hmm. So it was really my patients and my online following that kept asking questions and wanting more information. I just followed those breadcrumbs till I am where I am now.
Amy Schumer makes a joke about this. She talks about how when she was pregnant, she had hyperemesis. And during her stand-up, she says, doctors knew nothing about hyperemesis. And then she says, because it only affects women.
Right.
And so
that was good. That was good. Yeah.
But yeah, so we need more information about women's health. And you also talk about how a woman's body is like a violin and a man's body is more like a ukulele.
Yes. I've been known to call it a kazoo.
Kazoo. That's right.
No offense, but I can talk about why.
None taken.
Yeah. It's interesting. Another backstory that I don't tell often is when I started to figure out how intermittent fasting needed to be done for a woman's body, my agent and I, with Fast Like a Girl, we were so excited about getting the fasting at the time that I went into contract on that book. Fasting was so popular. There was Jason Fung and Dave Asprey and Will Cole and all these people had written all these great fasting books. But nobody had written one for women. And so we went to all the publishers and we're like, we need a book for women on fasting. And the majority of the big 5 publishers either said, we already have fasting books. Why would we need another one? One of the major publishers out there of the big five said, oh, we're not doing any more books on women's health for now.
Whoa.
And Hay House was like, we want to shepherd a woman's fasting book into the world. And that book has now sold 1.3 million books in 3 years. It has been a huge hit. So women just need to keep speaking up for what they need. As far as the violin versus the kazoo, the biggest challenge that we have with the human body for both men and women is that our number one need as a human body is survival. So your body will do everything it needs to do to stay alive. So, which is really fascinating when you start to break down different components like fasting. Mm-hmm. When you go without food, what ends up happening is your body has to make itself stronger temporarily so that it can go find food. Like, one of the greatest studies I ever found on fasting was that 48 hours without food, your whole dopamine system gets rebooted and new dopamine receptor sites start to form for both men and women.
Wow.
So why would the body do that? Because it wants you motivated to go find food.
Oh, interesting.
That's how because it needs to stay alive. So we can't forget that survival is constantly running us. Here's the outlier for women, is that the second major priority of the female body is reproduction. And so we can use infertility. We have a huge challenge with infertility right now for women. Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but the most common reason is women are incredibly stressed out. When your body is incredibly stressed out, it shuts down your whole reproductive system because what the body's doing is it's saying it's not safe to grow another human inside here. So this reproductive lens makes our body very, very sophisticated, which is why I called it a violin. Now, add to that a male body works off a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So you all get testosterone every 15 to 20 minutes pulsing into your system for 24 hours. Because we house a baby, when we're in our menstrual years, we actually are working off a 30-day cycle. So our hormones will change within 30 days. Your hormones change within 24 hours. So there is just a more sophisticated operation manual going on over here because of this, because of the housing a baby, making a baby inside of us. That reproduction makes us more of a violin and you all more of a kazoo. And I always say, take that with love.
No, I think it's a good comparison because it's true. So what I'm getting from this is men's bodies, the primary function is to survive. Women need to survive and reproduce.
That's right. That's right. Which is totally different because, so like this is a really cool concept that blew my mind in research for Age Like a Girl. A woman has more oxytocin receptor sites in her amygdala. The amygdala is the part of the brain that registers fight or flight. So when it registers stress, what ends up happening is the amygdala will cause you to want to run or to fight. But a woman has access to another stress response, and it's because of all these oxytocin receptor sites in our amygdala. And that is a stress response called tend and befriend. So women, when we're under stress, we tend to go and verbally process with our girlfriends. We want to get into connection. Even with men, we want to be into an oxytocin-rich environment because that calms our brain. We have this nurture aspect to ourselves, whether we've had kids or not, based off of our own internal design. Whereas men, and I know this sounds so sexist, and I really don't mean it that way. I just am trying to teach the physiology of the male versus the female body. Men, you all are more prone to want to fight or to run because you don't have as many oxytocin receptor sites in your brain that is going to make you want to connect during times of stress. It's fascinating, right?
It is. It's fascinating. And one thing that I keep going back to, and I'm wondering, I'd love to get your perspective on this. Why is it that so many women are stressed out now?
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the biggest places that Age Like a Girl came from is me watching my patients be so emotionally dysregulated. And what I came to understand in watching my own patients mixed with all the research I've done for all these books is that women are at an evolutionary mismatch with the modern world. And this is a huge challenge. And I even said this on Stephen Bartlett's Diary of the CEO. On the first time I went on, I said, the feminist women are not going to like what I have to say. And he quoted that and put it out, and it went viral for a moment. And what I meant by that is that when women are go, go, go all the time, when we are working, taking care of families, if that's what we're doing, when we are exercising over and over again to stay thin, when we are putting filters on socials so that we can look as beautiful as our neighbor who also put a filter on, when we are bombarded with toxic beauty products, all of this is absolutely sending the female body into this crazy place of nervous system dysregulation. Women are struggling with the modern world more than men. And it's because our bodies weren't meant to handle this much physical, emotional, and chemical stress. We need to rest a little bit more. We need to bring the toxic load down. We need to prioritize sleep. Doesn't mean we can't do everything that a man can do. I really want to point that out. I am not here saying that women shouldn't work or that women are any less than a man. I'm here to say that the female body needs a little more nurturing and care. And the modern world has set us up a bit to fail because we are doing everything and yet we're putting ourselves last. And that's where we're starting to see autoimmune conditions and infertility and even menopause symptoms are happening because women keep putting themselves last, keep working really hard, keep trying to keep up with the Joneses, and we're not giving women the tools to nurture ourselves.
And Dr. Mindy, how do you hope that your new book, Age Like a Girl, shifts the conversation around aging for women?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because this one's really personal for me because of my own experience through menopause, but also watching the culture try to bring the menopause conversation back into the zeitgeist and seeing so many women struggling with their menopause experience. So here's what I want people to understand. When you go into your 40s, you're not just losing your sex hormones, you're actually losing over 12 neurochemicals. And estrogen, not only did she release an egg in your body every single month, she also stimulated dopamine, serotonin, glutamate, GABA, oxytocin, BDNF, acetylcholine. She helped manage your metabolic system. She had a great hand in keeping you insulin sensitive. She controlled your circadian rhythm and helped you be able to sleep and definitely had an influence on melatonin. I call it estrogen's girl gang. She had like a pack of neurochemicals. When she goes away, that neurochemical armor that allowed you to handle stress, that allowed you to perform for everybody around you, that went away too. And now it's like you woke up to the real version of you. You woke up and you start to hear your own thoughts, your thoughts that say, I don't want to make dinner anymore. I don't want to keep having to please myself for everybody around me. Or the thoughts that were like, trying to keep yourself a certain number on the scale, because if you're a certain number on the scale, then you'll be loved. It's a neurochemical armor that comes down, and all of a sudden, you have an opportunity to see yourself and hear your own voice away from the needs of everybody else. And what's happening right now in the menopause space is we're telling women, get on the right HRT, get on an antidepressant. You don't have to suffer. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do those things, but what I am saying is that you have an opportunity to start to transform yourself into the most authentic version of you ever. You get to put you first. You get to stop the people pleasing. You get to decide what size clothes you want to wear. You get to decide if you want to keep up with the Joneses and keep the toxic beauty protocols that you've got going. Or maybe you just let that all go because you've neurochemically changed and you start caring more about yourself than you care about other people. That is what menopause was designed for. It is a get out of jail free card. It really is, that it gives you the opportunity to finally stand in the body and the version of you that you want to be. And in the book, I discovered a feminist psychologist. Her name's Carol Gilligan, and she studied girls in the 1980s. And she wrote a book called In a Different Voice. And what she found was that if you asked a boy and a girl at 9 what they both want, they will both tell you at 9 exactly what they want. So let's use food. You ask a boy and a girl at 9, what do you want to eat? The boy will tell you what he wants. The girl will tell you what she wants. By 11, you ask that same question. The boy will still tell you what he wants, but the girl will be like, she'll waver a little bit. By 13, when her hormones have fully come in, she will now tell you, she will respond to you and say, I don't know, what are you going to eat? And what Carol Gilligan found is that at puberty, that is the moment that the culture starts to teach girls that you are worthy if you are selfless. If you put the needs of everybody else ahead of you, you will be loved, you are worthy, you are enough. That is what the culture taught us. Just like for men, this is something, I have a son, I have a husband, I think the men were at the hands of this messaging poorly as well. Like you all were taught, don't be vulnerable, don't be weak. That's not manly. The culture gave us messages that told us to behave in a certain way. When you fast forward to women when they hit 40, and now estrogen goes away and all these neurochemicals change, all of a sudden you go to this place where you're like, I don't want to play this game anymore. And it's liberating. So what I wanted to do with this book is show women the neuroscience behind how your brain is rewiring itself to stand up for itself and to live life on your terms. That is liberating. That's not something we need to bitch and moan about. Mm-hmm. That means we need to work on really understanding what lights us up and not what we need to do for everybody else.
And one thing that you've spoken about multiple times is how we are the only species that lives almost, I think it's 41.2% of its life post-reproduction for women specifically. Yeah. And hearing you talk about menopause and plugging this into that, it's interesting that your body quite literally rids you of the armor that you used to compromise and do things that you don't want to do. So you're actually being forced at a biological level to step into who it is that you truly are. Phrased and defined that way. And again, this isn't just we're phrasing it this way, we're defining it this way. This is science. This is a fact.
Yeah.
Being empowered with that information totally changes my perspective on menopause and aging in general.
Yeah, and you got it. And so what I did in Age Like a Girl is I really dove into 4 different experts. One was Kristen Hawkes, who was an anthropologist. And she believes in a concept called the grandmother hypothesis, which is back in the hunter and gatherer days when a woman's reproductive system stopped. She moved to a different position within the tribe. And that was a position of leadership. And she discovered that when a woman didn't have all this energy going towards reproduction, she was out foraging for food because a lot of the hardier, stronger men, some of the stronger women, some of the stronger kids were off trying to make an animal kill. So it was the grandmothers that could forage for plants and for tubers and bring those back to the women that were nursing and growing babies. Mm-hmm. And they believe, according to the grandmother hypothesis, that it was the grandmothers that kept the human species alive, because the big animal kills didn't come that often. They came only 3% of the time. So we have an anthropological view. Then we have the view of neuroscience, and that was Lisa Mosconi's work, and she showed that when estrogen went away, women went from a cross-referenced brain, or relational brain, where we're constantly thinking about everybody else. Her brain actually changes to a lateralized brain, which is more like the brain men have. And the lateralized brain is a brain where you can be fully in your right brain, your creative, emotional side, or fully in your left brain, which is your logical, practical side. So instead of always bringing those two hemispheres together, menopause rewires the brain in a way so that you are only operating from one or the other, which is why you stop caring as much. I then looked at Carol Gilligan's, and I looked at the societal lens, and then I looked at the mystical lens through Clarissa Pinkola Estes's work on menopause as an initiation. So I tried to bring 4 different, really well-respected experts to the conversation of aging. And when you look at it through that lens, you actually see that women were meant to go into a place of leadership, that when our menstrual cycle goes away, our brain rewires itself, our neurochemical armor shifts so that I can be a leader in the culture.
Right. And like you were talking about earlier, or how we were talking about earlier, women's bodies have to survive and reproduce. Once reproduction's out of the equation, it's a totally new body. It's a rebirth.
That's it. You got it. And that's why I'm like, we can't miss this moment. Mm-hmm. You know how many women want to stand in their own authenticity? You know how many women want to speak their truth, but they don't know how? They don't know what to say? That's the whole purpose of Age Like a Girl, is to show that you don't want to miss this moment. This is a moment for you to finally come home to you. You know, my Like a Girl is like my brand, but I love this idea of aging like a girl means that you take your little girl back. What did she want before all these neurochemicals came in? Who was she before the outside world told you to behave a certain way or look a certain way for love? That's who you get to be when you go into your post-reproductive years. Mm-hmm. And that's super cool. Mm-hmm. I keep walking around saying, we have to stop talking about what's wrong with menopause, and we have to start talking about what's right with it. Mm-hmm. And that's what's right with it.
Well, one thing that I also find very interesting is that I believe that aging is such a beautiful process, and all the wisdom that comes along with it. I always wonder, why do we live in a culture that's anti-aging?
Yep. You know, so this idea came to me about 10 years ago to write this book, and it started with one question, which was, what's the purpose of menopause? Why are we designed to go for over 40% of our life without a whole organ system shuts down? And we still stay alive? That doesn't happen in the male body. Mm-hmm. So I started to try to answer that question. And when you start to look at what the body's doing, you see that everything is for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Nothing that the body does is ever by mistake or to curse you. So for women, it is truly an opportunity where the brain changes are freeing you from caring so deeply about everybody else. And if you sit and you talk to women that are over 40, or even talk to women over 50, you start to hear so many women say, I just can't do this life this way anymore. And two statistics that motivated me to write this book was that one was that the most common time for a woman to commit suicide is the decade between 45 and 55.
Whoa.
I had to look that statistic up over and over again because I was like, why would a 47-year-old mom who has a rocking career decide to kill herself? And so I what I saw was, and what I strongly feel is that she wakes up and she's like, I got to do this life different. And sometimes she doesn't have the tool set or doesn't have the cultural conversation to say, hey, I'm going to do this different. And the other statistic is that after 50, 70% of divorces are initiated by women. If they're in, these are, I think, based off heterosexual relationships, but 70% of divorces are happening by women. Why is that? Because women are waking up during that process and realizing that there are a lot of things we've done in life that need to change. And I think if we could have compassion for that neurochemical shift, if we could start to talk about these things, not from, oh, my wife is going crazy or my mom is turned into a total bitch through this process, if we could have compassion for what she's becoming, and we could start to have conversations about what do you want, not about what are you going to do for me, we're going to see a whole next generation of women that can stand as wise elders. And one of the things I kept asking myself is, how do we know what wisdom looks like? If I'm 50, I'm a 55-year-old woman. If I try to look like 25, how are you going to know where the wise women are? If I freeze my face and I try to look like my 25-year-old self, how are you going to know that I've actually lived a lot of life that has given me a lot of wisdom? And we need culturally to start to go back and ask ourselves, how do we use our wise elders for both men and women?
Yes.
Because there's so much life in our seniors that we can, and so much wisdom we can rely on. But we are so scared of aging that we had to put anti in front of it and then create a whole commercial industry around products that will teach you to fear aging. I'm hoping this book will start to change that and we start to embrace aging. I'm pro-aging. I'm not anti-aging. I think we need our elders right now. And how are we going to find them if we're so youth obsessed?
I can imagine as a woman going through menopause and not having access to this information, taking it personally and thinking, I'm flawed. There's something wrong with me.
Yes.
Not this is a process that happens to all women, which is probably what contributes to that high suicide rate. Because when you feel alone and you feel like you're flawed and broken, that's when you start to question everything, even existence, I feel. So having access to this information, and again, why I think what you're doing is so amazing, is quite literally life-saving.
Yeah. For women to see that all of a sudden they can't do certain behaviors, or for them to see things like, one of the things I hope is like, a 47-year-old woman is irritable. Instead of us having a conversation, oh, you're low in progesterone, take more progesterone cream. What if we ask her, what's not working for you? What are you irritable about? What part of your life is not working for you anymore? Or the woman, like I had so many women that came into my office and they would say, I'm so depressed, yet everything on paper, my life looks beautiful. And so we would sit and we would chat about, well, what is it what's missing in you that you don't feel worthy enough? And it was really interesting to have those conversations in my clinic. And so we need to look at depression, irritability, anxiety. Maybe there's parts of your life that need to change. And if we can open that conversation up really big, and we can all step into it, all of us, and have these conversations together as a culture, then that menopausal woman's not going to feel broken. She's going to feel supported. And I see us all like standing at the feet of menopausal women, cheering a woman on and saying, yeah, go find yourself. Who are you now? You've been of great service to us, either as a mother or as a friend. Like, now's your time to be you. One of my favorite stories I tell in the book is Michelle Obama had I don't know if you saw this summer, she was all over the newspaper where people thought she was leaving Barack. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh my God, the ex-first lady's leaving the ex-president. And she went on a podcast and said, why is it that my behavior now is where I look at my schedule and I only fill it up with things I want to do? And how come if I don't show up as right next to my husband in a dutiful way, I actually don't show up at certain events? Why do you think I'm leaving him? Can I just be a woman that's finally doing life on my terms? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I'm really hoping, is that women find that experience with this book. I even put in the book an appendix to men. I literally wrote a chapter just for men of, this is what the woman looks like in your life. This is what she's going through. I wrote a chapter to employers. I wrote a chapter to healthcare practitioners, because I want us all to step into this conversation and look at this transition very different. It needs all of us in it, because that way those statistics change. Women stop killing themselves. And I'm not trying to keep everybody married. I understand that some marriages don't work out, but that divorce rate might change if we understood that this is a transformation process. This is a moment where a woman's becoming something different. She's not, a teenager goes into puberty and all of a sudden becomes snarky, mm-hmm. and a parent will be like, oh, they're a teenager now. They're becoming an adult. They're learning to stand on their own 2 feet. But we don't give that same grace to menopausal women to become something different.
I'm glad that you're bringing up that you wrote several chapters for different people, including men, because one thing that I want to make very clear on today's episode is that your books are not just for women.
Yes.
I've learned a lot about life myself through reading your books. And also, we have women in our lives. We have mothers, we have friends, daughters, cousins. Yeah. We need to understand how women function and work, and that it's different from men too, so that we can be compassionate during these moments when women are going through these huge physiological changes.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's really true. Even in researching this book, I understood my 86-year-old mom better. I did a bunch of research on the neurotransmitter acetylcholine and how we lose that. It's a memory neurotransmitter. And one of the ways we get that neurotransmitter back is by telling stories. Mm. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, is this why my mom tells the same story over and over again? How many of us have moms who are like, God, you've told me that 1,000 times. But now when she tells that story, my brain's like, oh, there she goes. Acetylcholine, she's keeping her brain sharp. I wonder if I could ask her a different question about that story so she can actually have to go into her memory bank and make more acetylcholine so her brain can start even more sharp. So to your point, when we understand this transition, we know how to interact with women that are important to us in our life. And I think, that to me is what the goal should be, is that we are here to all understand each other in a deeper way. So I really appreciate your comment on that, because to date, it has all been, we don't talk about menopause. We don't talk about a woman's menstrual cycle. And now we're talking about it. So let's talk about it in a really positive way, not in a way where everybody wants to run from the menopausal woman.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Mindy, one thing that you've talked about that I think is really important to touch on is how sometimes, and I think men are guilty of this as well, you step on a scale and the number that you see makes you feel worthy or unworthy, right? You could be too skinny or too fat, whatever. Knowing that men and women's bodies are so different, what can both men and women do to achieve a weight that's healthy for them without buying into this standardized, weight that everyone needs to weigh to be desirable and worthy?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. And I always want to say, we don't want to leave the men out, there's so much too that we can learn about how your bodies work and our bodies work. And the more we understand how our bodies work, the better it's just easy to take care of it. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to weight loss, I think the first thing I want everybody to understand is that there's no perfect weight and there's no perfect size. I remember years ago, I was at the Olympic Museum in Lake Geneva, Switzerland, and they had a picture of all the different Olympic athletes that won gold medals. And I forget, it was in the 1980s. And you look at the women and everybody was a different size and shape, but they were all gold medal Olympic athletes. Same thing with men, all different sizes and shapes according to the sport that they played, but they were all gold medal Olympic athletes in the top of their game, and their size couldn't be any more different. So we first have to understand that the human frame looks different on everybody. So don't try, the goal is not for a woman to be a size 2. The goal is for you to love living in your body. Mm-hmm. That is the goal. Do you love every day when you get up? Do you love putting your clothes on? Do you look in the mirror and love what you see in the mirror? If you don't love that, then what would make you love that? Mm-hmm. That needs to be the first question that you ask, not, oh, my doctor said I should be 120 because my BMI, that I don't even know what my BMI is, but the doctor said my BMI was high, and so I need to be 120. That's outsourcing your power. When you bring your power back to you, you ask yourself, what size do I want to be?
Yes.
Because you might be trying to lose weight to be a size you don't even want to be. Mm-hmm. And do we all need to be stick thin? Is that the idea here? So the first thing is you choose what you want to be. Second, we have 2 metabolisms. One we activate when we eat, and one we activate when we don't eat. And so when I learned fasting, I was like, this is insane. We have a multi-billion-dollar industry called weight loss that is all around debating what foods we should be eating, when really we should be talking more about when we should be eating. So I call the food system, and Fast Like a Girl, I call it the sugar burner system. You activate it when you eat anything. You can activate it when you chew gum. All of a sudden your blood sugar goes up, boom, you're in your sugar burner system. When you haven't eaten for about 10 to 12 hours, your body starts to metabolically shift over into the fat burner system. And your body is so intelligent that it registers that the food that your blood sugar is going down, food's not coming in, so it better use a different fuel. And that fuel is called a ketone. Our brains, both men and women, we need 50% glucose, which you get from the sugar burner system, and we need 50% ketones, which you get from this other metabolism that I call the fat burning system. So when it comes to weight loss, we were all lied to when we were told to count calories, when we were told to manipulate carbs, when we were told we needed to eat certain foods to lose weight. What I want everybody to do is eat healthy, eat real food, get off the processed food, and then start to learn every day to have a fasting window where you're going 12 hours. You don't even need to go that long, 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours without food. And now you've activated that fat burning system and you are what we call metabolically flexible. So the whole weight conversation got off course when we forgot to talk about this other metabolism. And back to your other point, I can't tell you how many men have messaged us and said that they got so much out of Fast Like a Girl, not only for themselves. I think chapter 2 in that book on fasting is one of the best chapters I ever wrote. And it's a great synopsis of fasting and what length fast you would want to do. But then to your point, they understood women. But this metabolic flexibility, this switch from sugar burner to fat burner, that's where you lose weight for good.
And what do you think is the biggest myth that you have to debunk most often about fasting?
Oh, thank you for asking me that. That it's calorie restriction. Fasting is not calorie restriction. What you're going to do is every day you're going to have a window of time in which you eat, and you're going to have a window of time in which you fast. So what you end up doing is most people will use dinner, smart, or use sleep. So you stop eating, at like 7 o'clock at night. Just stop. Don't do the nighttime munchies. So now you go 7 to midnight. That's 5 hours. And then you wake up in the morning, don't eat breakfast right away. You can have your cup of coffee. And then at maybe 10 o'clock, you open up your eating window. You've now fasted 15 hours. You have a fasting window. And then when you open up your eating window, eat. This is not about calorie restriction. This is a game of this chunk of time I'm not eating, so my body can heal itself. But once I open that eating window up, I'm going to eat. I'm not going to restrict. But what I am going to do is focus on healthy food.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Not junk food.
That's right. That's the key.
And you also mentioned that you can have your cup of coffee, but not if you're adding creamers or anything like that, right?
Yeah, so the coffee is like the hot topic for fasters. Coffee can stimulate caffeine itself, and coffee can stimulate autophagy. Autophagy is where the body starts to repair itself. So we like coffee. You add MCT oil in there, and a little bit of MCT oil can actually kill the hunger hormone. Okay, we like that as a faster. So now I'm having black coffee with a little bit of MCT oil on it. I'm actually facilitating the fasting process, and I'm not hungry. So this is great. If you add just a little bit of cream, for some people, a heavy whipping cream will not spike their blood sugar. If it doesn't spike your blood sugar, it didn't pull you out of a fasted state. But that's where you're going to have to test yourself. So, I can tell you without a doubt, black coffee, 99.9% of the time, doesn't kick people out of a fasted state. I can tell you without a doubt, MCT oil, little bit in your coffee is going to, for sure, kill your hunger. What I can't tell you is if you put a splash of cream in there, if it's going to pull you out of a fasted state, because that's where it's unique to every person.
And Dr. Mindy, you are a New York Times bestselling author, which is no easy feat.
Thank you.
Can you talk to us about how it is that you, first of all, started going about writing your book, but then also the practical side of finding an agent and landing a deal and actually getting a book published?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And I think you first have to ask why you're writing a book. So for me, I like to write books to open conversations up. I feel like with Age Like a Girl, I feel a little bit like I'm taking the book and I'm just like putting it out there for the culture and being like, okay, y'all, let's just talk about this for a moment. It's a conversation starter. And I love that. It also can be an authority piece. Like like the first book I ever wrote was called The Reset Factor. And it was about how each organ system related to the gut microbiome. And it was at a time when the gut microbiome was just starting to be a hot topic. So what is it you want to bring forward to the culture that isn't already being brought forward? If you are trying to write a book for vanity or for money, don't do it. There's other ways you can do that. You can go and start a YouTube channel or a podcast and get your word out. But if you want to actually change something going on in the culture, a conversation going on, or bring forward something that in your heart that you feel like needs to be said, write a book. Second thing is that we need to bring back more long format. So this is why I love podcasts. There's only really 2 long format content right now. We have podcasts and we have books. And then we have some YouTube. YouTube is a little more long format. So you can say more in a book than you can say in a video, in a podcast. You know, my book, Fast Like a Girl, was 83,000 words. So, and I had, years to write that, and we analyzed it. You could write something out and go, oh, I don't like the way that's said. Let me rephrase it. I didn't really quite mean it that way. Whereas in this kind of conversation, we could walk away from it and be like, oh, I wish I had said that differently. With a book, you have that opportunity to really refine what your belief system is. So understand why you're writing it first. And I would say, if you wanted to be a successful book, find something that people aren't talking about and bring that forward to the world. Because we don't need just a bunch of, we didn't need just another book on fasting. We needed a book on fasting for women. We didn't need another menopause book. We needed a book on how menopause was this transformation. So I'm always looking for the unique piece that the culture needs. Now, once you have that under your belt, this is the one that makes everybody sad.
We're ready.
You ready? Publishers want to know how you're going to market it. The publisher doesn't market it, you market it. So I recently had somebody send me a book proposal and they're like, could you introduce this to your agent or your publisher? It was a great concept. And I said, I can't give you any access to those 2 until you tell me what your email list is. And they didn't have an email list. They didn't have a social media platform. I'm like, go get one, then go and pitch your book. So I can tell you the big publishers are looking for about 100,000 person email list. They're looking for YouTube channels like yours, anything over like 100,000. Now they're going to be a little more interested. So they want to know how you're going to take this unique message and get it out into the world and sell it. So if you have a unique message and you have a way to sell it, now you have a door in. Now, I did a couple of things. When I went to go find an agent, I cold called agents. I just went and looked up women's health literary agents. And I emailed person after person after person. And I got a lot of polite declines. Oh, we have enough authors. We're not looking for this right now, blah, blah, blah. But I had heard that this happens to a lot of authors, that they get a lot of no's, which you will. And so I was like, okay, let me keep going. So then I went to a friend who had an agent. And I said, would you introduce me to your agent? And he did. He wrote a book. His name's Drew Manning. He wrote a book on the ketogenic diet. So I was like, I know your agent is into health. So can you connect us? So you can ask somebody who has an agent to like make that connection for you. The thing the hopeful thing I hope that I will say is that agents and publishers are looking for people to publish. They're not sitting there being incredibly discerning about, well, I don't know about that person. What they want to know is, do you have a great book idea and do you have a platform to sell it? And if those 2 things you have, you're in great shape. Go start cold call, like email, go to a publisher, go to the big 5, find the people on their website and email them. You can go direct to the publisher. I can't tell you how many of my friends I've given them express passes to Hay House. I'm like, tell me I do the same thing I just said. What do you want to write about? What conversation do you want to open up? How are you going to sell it? And then, okay, yeah, that looks good. And then I introduce them. Agents, you can just Google, maybe you're into sci-fi. Maybe you want to write a sci-fi novel. Like, go and look up sci-fi agents and then cold email them. But understand, it might not be your book idea that opens their email. It's going to be, how are you going to sell it? That will do that.
No, this is really helpful.
Yeah,
it's very helpful. I feel like anybody that's listening that's interested in writing a book, these are very concrete steps that someone can take.
Yeah.
And also it's good. There are a lot of important things to consider.
Yes.
What are you going to say? How are you going to sell it? Because I think that a lot of people are under the impression that you land a publishing deal and they're just going to market your book.
That's right. Thank you for saying that. It looks glamorous when you're looking at like the level I hit, but you didn't see me 10 years ago. And I think what you have to keep in mind is sometimes, like I self-published my first book.
Oh, wow.
And I just was like, I want to write a book. I want to learn how to do this. So I had a friend who had written a book and he showed me how to write it. Then I hired an editor who actually ended up being one of the collaborative writers for the Chicken Soup for the Soul books.
Oh, wow.
So get yourself a good editor if you go down that path. And then I self-published it. And then from there, I was like, okay, I want to try something different this time. I'm going to try to get an agent. And so you might have to take little baby steps before you get to the big publisher. Mm-hmm. And you have to just slowly show them what you're made of. So it's not like you're going to get the 6-figure book deal right out of the bat. Do the 6-figure book deals exist? Absolutely. Especially if you have a big following. They do exist. It can be very profitable to write a book if you have the following and if you come up with a unique conversation.
And we've talked a lot about the shift that's happening, especially around women's health and hormones. What do you think still needs to be done?
Ooh, in the women's space?
Yes.
I think the biggest thing is we need to get women believing in themselves. We really are so conditioned to get love from looking a certain way. We want to feel worthy and we want to feel enough. And we have to get women to start to feel enough without having to look a certain way. Because we're going to keep damaging ourselves if we think the only way we're worthy or the only way we're going to keep a job is if we look young, or the only way we're worthy is if we're a size 2. We will keep harming ourselves. So I actually think that it's on an individual level that women need to start to believe in this miraculous body that we were given the gift to live in. And that is probably the hardest thing to do, is to get women to unwind all the toxic behaviors that they've been doing to feel good enough. And men do it too. I'm not leaving the men out, but we as women, we've been really culturally conditioned to manipulate how we look so that the culture will love us. I have my high school best friend. I was reconnected with her about a year ago, and she had had a bunch of plastic surgery done, and we were talking about it. And I asked her, why? Like, why did you choose to go through all these different plastic surgery it sounds horrible, the recovery, and yes, you look beautiful, but why? And she said, well, don't you love when you show up with a group of people and they say, oh my God, you look amazing? Don't you feel good when you show up when you haven't seen a friend in a while and they go, you look so good? Doesn't that make you feel good? And I said, actually, what makes me feel better is if I haven't seen somebody in a while and they say, I love what you're up to in the world, or they say, I feel so good to be around you. I love your energy. I would way rather somebody compliment me on my heart, somebody compliment me on the energy I brought to a room than somebody compliment me on how I look. But she is conditioned by a culture, this friend of mine, to only feel good about herself based on the external. And that is a huge reason I wrote Age Like a Girl, because we've got to help women see that we come in all different shapes and sizes and colors, and our hair all looks different, and we're all worthy of love. But the most important thing is that we love ourselves first.
I love it. That's one of my favorite answers I've ever gotten.
Thank you.
And Dr. Mindy, what is the biggest lesson you've learned throughout the course of your career so far?
Oh, that's a good one. It's gonna sound like a double-edged sword here. I'm honestly shocked at how mean people can be, especially on social media.
Oh yeah.
And I would say definitely moving from my office into a more public life. I've never been bullied prior to that. I got bullied mostly by men. So I'm just shocked at how mean people can be, but I also have realized how powerful it is to be resilient, how powerful it is to be authentic, because people are going to criticize you no matter what you look like, no matter how you try to wrap yourself up to please everybody. People are going to criticize you. It doesn't matter if you're an influencer or a podcaster or just an everyday human. People are going to criticize you. The most important thing in life is to love yourself and not criticize yourself. If you can show up in the truest version of yourself, in the most authentic version that you feel good about, you love, that is the goal of a happy life. Because people will criticize you no matter what. Why don't you learn to fall so deeply in love with yourself that it doesn't matter what everybody else says? I would say that has been the biggest takeaway of my 30 plus career, is that when you teach a woman to fall in love with herself, she becomes unstoppable. And that probably is why I keep writing these books.
Well, and I think through your work, you're making that possible for people, because you really are empowering every single person that watches your videos on YouTube, listens to your podcast, and reads your books.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
And where is the best place for people to keep up with you, listen to your podcast, and find your books?
Well, it's funny. I've just started doing my book launches. So I'm like, do I have the URL down? I will tell you, you can go to agelikeagirl.com. There'll be some giveaways and books there. Of course, you can go to Amazon. I want to give a shout out to the independent bookstores. It's something that I actually have started doing myself, is all the books I get now, I get through independent bookstores. And you can either go to an indie in your local area, or you can still stay at your computer and go to bookshop.org, and it will send you a book from an independent bookstore. So you can get this book anywhere. I want to support the mom and pop stores that are trying to keep bringing books to us so that we can have the experience of going into a bookstore. So if you have the capability to go to your independent bookstore or go to bookshop.org, please go, so that we can support those people. And if you can't, you can get the book everywhere. As always, I hope people enjoy it.
Well, I'm going to include the links to purchase your books, your podcast, your YouTube channel, and your social media accounts in the episode notes. So anybody who wants to check out your stuff can easily do that.
Thank you.
And Dr. Mindy, if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice right before embarking on this specific journey, specifically tailored to you, what would it be?
Oh, be your most authentic self. Don't change yourself for anybody else. Be you. And I will happily say that I'm sitting here at 55. That version of me is absolutely who's showing up.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Mindy. This was amazing. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I loved it all. So thank you for your warmth and great conversation. This was really beautiful. So thank you.